Sonic the Hedgehog 4 is officially claiming early spring for himself, firmly locking in a March 2027 release date and completely shutting down all those wild rumors about a delayed holiday launch. Instead of going head-to-head with Secret Wars in late December like the internet previously speculated, Paramount is letting their blue blur completely dominate the early box office season. They know exactly what they are building toward, and kicking off production more than a full year in advance proves they are absolutely not rushing this sequel. The era of playing it safe with video game adaptations is entirely over. The creative team is pushing this property into pure science fiction epic territory, and all the available evidence points to a massive time-bending storyline pulled straight from the deepest lore of the classic Sega games. Families and hardcore fans alike are going to get an absolute cinematic spectacle way sooner than expected, and the studio is betting massive money on this franchise, setting the pace for the entire year. The production budget has reportedly been supercharged to handle this incredible new scope. And it makes perfect sense because the plot leaks suggest a narrative that moves at absolute breakneck speed, giving audiences that exact same rush of intense adrenaline as getting strapped into a massive hydraulic launch roller coaster roaring through the desert. The franchise has successfully evolved from a simple road trip into a visually stunning multiverse war that will demand the absolute best screens available. The hype train completely derailed in the best way possible when director Jeff Fowler shared a behind-the-scenes production photo to celebrate the early stages of the project. He was casually holding the iconic Pico Pico hammer belonging to Amy Rose. Fans already knew she was arriving after that massive post-credits tease in the third film, but Fowler posing with her signature weapon confirms she is stepping into a central driving role rather than just showing up for a quick background cameo. And according to massive leaks from insiders, her origin story is getting a complete and brilliant overhaul that changes the entire dynamic of the cinematic universe. In the original games, Amy was introduced simply as an energetic admirer who gets swept up in the chaos and needs saving. The current rumor claims the cinematic universe is throwing that outdated concept entirely out the window. The new script reportedly brings Amy in from a completely ruined alternate future where the villains have already conquered the planet. She supposedly travels across the multiverse to stop this nightmare timeline from ever existing. By turning her into a hardened survivor trying to desperately fix the past, the writers are clearly taking the tragic post-apocalyptic backstory of Silver the Hedgehog and mapping it directly onto Amy. This is an incredibly smart screenwriting move. It keeps the core cast manageable while elevating Amy into the emotional anchor of the entire movie. Instead of Sonic teaching someone else how to be a hero again, Amy might be the one dragging a relaxed, comfortable Sonic into a desperate fight for the survival of the multiverse. Writers Pat Casey and Josh Miller have been meticulously planting these narrative seeds for years. They have mentioned in passing that their long-term blueprint always included expanding the mythology at a very specific pace. Following the exact pattern of the third movie pulling its themes from Sonic Adventure 2, the fourth film is undeniably tapping into the DNA of Sonic CD. That specific game is entirely built around time travel, alternate realities, and stopping bad futures from taking root. It also prominently features the Time Stones, which are reality-altering gems that let the user rewrite history completely, functioning very differently from the Chaos Emeralds we have already seen. With Gerald Robotnik expanding the family legacy in the previous film and introducing advanced retro technology, the narrative pipeline is fully primed for timeline manipulation on a grand scale. Everything clicked into terrifying focus when Tacit Sign Studio accidentally uploaded and then hastily deleted unused concept art from the third film. Fans captured the images instantly, revealing an absolutely unhinged design featuring an Emperor Eggman. He was standing in a massive, dark, futuristic temple alongside Metal Sonic, acting as his commanding general. The art screamed dystopian warlord rather than the goofy, eccentric scientist we are used to seeing. Since the studio cut this specific visual from the third film, it heavily implies they are absolutely hoarding it for this time travel sequel, where a dark future takes center stage. The return of Jim Carrey is the ultimate wildcard in this entire situation. He famously stepped away from acting a few years back, but returned because he genuinely loves portraying this maniacal villain, leaving the door wide open for another massive appearance if the script delivers the right chaotic energy. Even though his character supposedly met his end previously, the classic blockbuster rule always applies where the lack of a body guarantees a dramatic comeback. With time travel officially on the table, there is a massive possibility we might see multiple versions of Robotnik from branching timelines interacting with each other, which would give Carrey the ultimate comedic playground. The Sonic Sonic community has developed an incredibly compelling theory regarding that imposing emperor figure from the concept art. Going back to the beloved game Sonic Heroes, fans are introduced to Neo Metal Sonic, a terrifyingly upgraded mechanical tyrant capable of shape-shifting, copying unique abilities, and flawlessly impersonating Eggman himself. The absolute greatest plot twist imaginable would involve Sonic and his friends fighting their way through a ruined civilization to dethrone Emperor Eggman, only to discover in the intense final act that Neo Metal Sonic has been the brutal puppet master ruling the ashes the entire time. Elevating Metal Sonic from a silent robotic enforcer to an overarching mastermind villain would completely shatter audience expectations and inject a massive dose of dark science fiction energy into the narrative. Despite the massive escalation in stakes, the core family dynamic remains completely secure. Ben Schwartz returns as the voice of Sonic, keeping that essential energetic heartbeat alive and well. Idris Elba and Colleen O'Shaughnessy are back as Knuckles and Tails, alongside James Marsden and Tika Sumpter grounding the very necessary human side of the story. Paramount is aggressively expanding the roster and the universe simultaneously. We already have the Knuckles television series proving the streaming model works beautifully, and a theatrical spin-off reportedly focusing on Keanu Reeves as Shadow is quietly in active development. The studio is meticulously building a sprawling web of standalone projects that will eventually cross over into massive team-up events, rivaling the biggest comic book franchises. Jeff Fowler remains firmly in the director's seat, proving beyond a shadow of doubt that he is the undisputed architect of this cinematic universe. He intrinsically understands the delicate balance between video game accuracy and compelling blockbuster storytelling, refusing to make the world overly grim while still consistently raising the emotional stakes. Production is officially gearing up early to handle the massive rendering requirements of these intricate new digital environments. We are looking at a story that expertly blends the time-hopping chaos of the classic era with the identity-swapping betrayals of the modern games, all wrapped in a multiverse war over the Time Stones. Paramount transformed what started as a nervous studio experiment into an unstoppable juggernaut that is now completely dictating the rules of the game and reshaping how video game movies operate on a fundamental level. The musical landscape of this franchise is another massive reason fans keep coming back to theaters. Composer Tom Holkenborg has consistently delivered adrenaline-pumping scores that perfectly capture the raw kinetic energy of moving at supersonic speeds. If the fourth installment genuinely embraces the deeper lore of the classic era, the soundtrack has an incredible opportunity to weave in legendary melodies like Stardust Speedway or subtle nods to the iconic Japanese and American game soundtracks. Combine that intense audio nostalgia with the on-screen introduction of the Time Stones, and the power scaling of this entire cinematic universe completely shifts. The Chaos Emeralds provide unimaginable raw energy, but the Time Stones allow a user to literally rewrite reality and manipulate history. Watching Sonic and Amy figure out how to harness that specific reality-bending magic against an unstoppable mechanized warlord is guaranteed to make the third act visually and audibly explosive. Looking at the broader cultural impact makes you realize Paramount and Sega have achieved something that once felt entirely impossible in modern Hollywood. They thoroughly shattered the infamous video game movie curse and built a highly sustainable live-action continuity that commands the same level of respect as traditional comic book blockbusters. While other massive studios constantly struggle to get a single gaming adaptation off the ground without alienating the core fanbase, the Sonic cinematic universe is confidently mapping out a decade of deeply interconnected stories. March 2027 simply cannot arrive fast enough for audiences who have supported this wild journey since the early redesign drama. The creative team actually listened to the fans and respected the underlying mythology, setting the stage for a multiverse epic that will undoubtedly cement this franchise as a monumental achievement in geek history.